Good morning. It is Monday morning, means time for some Motivational Monday. My name is Christopher Donnell, and I'm the pastor here at Urbana UMC, and we're so grateful and thankful that you're joining in with us today to start your week off, hopefully to feel encouraged and to be reminded of the hope that we have in Jesus. This past week, we are continuing our sermon series at church called Chosen, and the idea that God chooses us to be his hands and feet to the world, to be his royal priests. If you have breath in your lungs, if you were created, you are here, and he chose you to be a part of that story. And so this week, we focused on giving thanks because of that. And there's a pretty commonly quoted scripture in church circles for a long time. It's in Psalm 100 verses 4, but I'm going to read verses 3, 4, and 5, and this is and from the psalmist, and it says, "Know that the Lord is God, it is he who made us, and we are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. For the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations." And this idea of being thankful is actually a quality, an attribute, an overflow of who we are as God's people, and we should be thankful always. And even in First Thessalonians 5:16-18, it says, "Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances." Now that's hard. All circumstances. We can find a lot of different reasons to not give thanks or be excited or joyful or pray or full of praise. But regardless of our circumstances, that doesn't mean God is not with us, and it doesn't mean he's not worthy of our giving of praise and thanks to him. And so the challenge this week is really found in verse 4. Enter his gates with thanksgiving, in his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. Now, I really had this reframed for me as I thought about the gate part. Why is there a gate? Why are we entering his gates with thanksgiving? Well, this is a reference back to the tabernacle, the original temple for the Jewish people, how they would enter the gates with praise, and then there was a courtyard where they would also praise and be giving thanks. And then there was the Holy of Holies where the priests would go. And this is the idea. It's almost like as we enter into places, our hearts should be bent towards thanksgiving. And I don't know if we're always that way. I know I'm not. I don't think about arriving to church being thankful as I'm exiting out of my vehicle and walking across the parking lot into the church building. Or I don't know if I'm feeling like entering my home by giving thanks as I drive home from work. I park the car in a driveway and I get out and I walk in. I don't think about giving thanks as I enter into those places. And then even one step closer, you're into the courtyard. It's almost like prepare. Give thanks when you're 5 miles away from church before you arrive, or 5 miles away from home. And as you pull into the driveway, then enter their courts with praise. And it's almost like this expectation. Are we expecting God's blessings, God's goodness, God to show up in our life and circumstances? Or it's like when we show up, whatever happens. I think a lot of our results, at least like it depends on our mindset, how we look at things. I mean, if we're looking for the negatives, I think all we'll see is negatives. If we're a heart full of thanks and thanksgiving, it's going to be a lot more difficult to fall into sin and be angry and bitter, or not see where God is working. So the challenge this week is before you go into anywhere, your work, your school, your home, your church, begin to give thanks for God wherever you are. As you enter in and exit out, give thanks. And as you're drawing near to that place of encounter with either other people or God's people, or even God himself, enter his courts with praise, and then be prepared to meet with Jesus, whether that's through conversation or your family, or at dinner time together, or at your work where someone needs your assistance and help and wisdom. God is going to use those situations, and I think a lot of it depends on how we're looking at it. Are we thankful? Are we full of thanks, or are we focused on it is what it is and the negatives? So this week the motivation is give thanks, enter his gates with thanksgiving, enter his courts with praise, and expect God to show up. Love you, pray for you, see you next week.